Dushitaha Dakshaya Sapam Vishasarjadharunam Ye Chan Vamodham Stad Avachatam Dvija Ladies, please. Vijnaya, understanding, excuse me, Sapam, the curse, Girisha, of Shiva, Anuga Agrani, one of the principal associates, Nandishvara, Rosha, anger, Kashaya, red, Dushita, blinded, Dakshaya, to Daksha, Sapam, a curse, Vishasharja, gave, Darunam, harsh, Ye, who, Cha, and Anvamodan, tolerated, Tat Avadshatam, the cursing of Shiva, Dvijaha, Brahmanas. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: upon understanding that Lord Shiva had been cursed, Nandishvara, one of Lord Shiva's principal associates, became greatly angry. His eyes became red, and he prepared to curse Daksha and all the Brahmanas present there, who had tolerated Daksha's cursing Shiva in harsh words. Srila Prabhupada's purport. There is a long-standing dissension among some of the neophyte Vaishnavas and Shaivites. They are always at loggerheads. It's very interesting that Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada has said that it's the neophyte Vaishnavas and Shaivites. They are always at loggerheads. Loggerheads is an interesting kind of description. Loggerheads conjures up many kind of images that you might get. Big log of wood, dull matter, thick-headed, loggerhead, big log. When Daksha cursed Lord Shiva in harsh words, some of the brahmanas present might have enjoyed it because some brahmanas do not very much admire Lord Shiva. This is due to their ignorance of Lord Shiva's position. Nandishvara was affected by the cursing, but he did not follow the example of Lord Shiva, who was also present there. Although Lord Shiva could have cursed Daksha in a similar way, he was silent and tolerant. But Nandishvara, his follower, was not tolerant. Of course, as a follower, it was right for him not to tolerate an insult to his master. But he should have not cursed the brahmanas who were present. The entire issue was so complicated that those who were not strong enough forgot their positions, and thus cursing and counter-cursing went on in that great assembly. In other words, the material field is so unsteady that even personalities like Nandishvara, Daksha, and many of the brahmanas present were infected by the atmosphere of anger. Om Magana Timarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master has forced me to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. Translation responsively, please. Upon understanding that Lord Shiva had been cursed, Nandishvara, one of Lord Shiva's principal associates, became greatly angry. His eyes became red, and he prepared to curse Daksha and all the brahmanas present there who had tolerated Daksha's cursing Shiva in harsh words. So Nandishvara is responding to the harsh words that were spoken against Lord Shiva. And he didn't follow the example of Lord Shiva himself, who was present there at the time and who tolerated and was silent. So that was the ability of Lord Shiva to hear such harsh words. He could have been very much offended. Maybe he was offended. He could quickly have identified that I am the husband of your daughter. You have given your daughter in marriage to me, and now you're cursing me in such a horrible way and saying such nasty things. It's not correct that you're doing this. I've not done anything wrong. He could easily have gone in that path, but he tolerated and he was silent. And he manifested the higher qualities of a Vaishnava. Lord Shiva is known as the greatest of Vaishnavas. He's not so easy to understand, Lord Shiva, because he's in charge of, he's taken the service to Krishna of the tamaguna, that mode of ignorance. So it's not so easy to penetrate with the intelligence, the understanding of the position of Lord Shiva. But Nandishvara, he was not able to follow the example of his master, and then Srila Prabhupada explains that actually it was his duty in one sense, that his master was being unnecessarily criticized and blasphemed and cursed, that the follower is supposed to take some action. We see in the pastime, or the pastime of Now my brain's gone dead. Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Goswami was was entertaining or hosting, should we say, hosting a great personality. And Jiva Goswami was present at the same time. And after hearing from Rupa Goswami, the personality that he was hosting suggested that maybe what you've said is not quite correct. I'm just trying to remember exactly what he said, but it doesn't really matter in one sense. But he said something, and the other person objected that maybe this is a little... Can anybody remember exactly what it was? It was a little extreme, that what he'd said. So, Rupa Goswami accepted. He said, yes, you're pointing that out. Maybe I'll make some adjustment. I'll do some editing in this work that he was producing. But Jiva Goswami was there, and Jiva Goswami, later on, the person they were hosting was going to take his bath, and Jiva Goswami was serving Rupa Goswami he is a nephew of Rupa Goswami. So Jiva Goswami was serving, so he went with this guest to take his bath, and while he was there, he took the opportunity to explain to the guest that actually you shouldn't have spoken in this way, because what Rupa Goswami has explained, I'll explain it to you further. And he went into detail and helped the person to understand what Rupa Goswami had actually said, and the guest was really taken aback. He said, "Oh wow, yes, I can understand." But Rupa Goswami didn't say anything. So when he came back from taking his bath sometime later, he said to Rupa Goswami that, "Your Jiva Goswami is so wonderful. He explained to me this higher understanding, so please accept my apologies for trying to correct you, because actually I didn't understand what you were exactly presenting." So Rupa Goswami negotiated that, but then after that person was no longer present, he called Jiva Goswami and he said, "You should immediately leave Vrindavan. You are not able to control your tongue and your mind, and you're speaking in this way to correct someone. So leave Vrindavan. Vrindavan's not a fit place for someone who's not able to control the speaking and the mind." So Jiva Goswami immediately left. And then all the devotees, they heard that this had happened, and they were saying, "Oh, Jiva Goswami, he's so dear to us, he's such a great soul. Oh, you've sent him away." They were so unhappy. So after some time, they decided to speak to Sanatana Goswami, who is the elder brother of Rupa Goswami, who is the most senior of the Vaishnavas there. And they said, "What can we do? We love Rupa Goswami, he's our worshipful personality, but he sent Jiva away, who is also one of our dearest devotees. What can we do?" So then Sanatana Goswami, I'm trying to remember this, it doesn't stop, these stories always continue, they don't stop, they keep going to another. So Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami says, "Okay, I'll do something." So after a little while, he found the opportune moment to speak to Rupa Goswami, and he says that one of the prayers that you're offering is not correct, is something not quite right. And Rupa Goswami was, "Oh, please tell me what it is that I'm saying that's improper." And he said, no. And he said, "At the right time you'll understand." And then, I can't give you every detail of the story, unfortunately, but there came a point where he explained that the jivas, you have to give, one of the things that you're saying in your prayer is that to give mercy to all the jivas, but you're not giving mercy to one jiva. That is Jiva Goswami, who you've sent out of Vrindavan. So when Rupa heard this in such a beautiful way, loving, caring way, he said, oh, thank you. And he then relented and said, "Call Jiva, tell him he can come back." So this is, in a similar way, the complexity of life. So Jiva was acting appropriately, Rupa Goswami was acting appropriately, Sanatana Goswami was acting appropriately, and all the devotees were acting appropriately, all having different ways of seeing something and how to deal with it. So it's like a minefield. Life. We traverse the path of life, and over here is honor. Oh, that looks nice. No, it's a minefield. It'll blow up in your face if you seek honor. And over here there's infamy and fame and profit and loss and the dualities, the minefield's ready to explode as we try to traverse life. So it happens in many, many ways. In this part of the Bhagavatam, we're hearing about very exalted personalities. They're not ordinary personalities. Daksha, we think, oh, Daksha, he got a goat's head, he was a bit of a demigod of sorts, and he was a bit naughty and he got a goat's head. But actually, Daksha was the head of all the Prajapatis. He was performing a sacrifice for 1,000 years to benefit the universe. This is the kind of consciousness this personality had. When he entered the arena, it's explained that his effulgence was like many suns. It was just so effulgent, everyone rose. So he was a very exalted personality with very good intentions to execute the order of Lord Brahma under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to progenate. That was the position. So Daksha is a very exalted person. But somehow or other, he was compromised in his position. And we're all compromised to some extent, whatever our position, whether we were a sannyasi, whether we were a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, whether we were a brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, shudra, whether we were a 10th class chandala, 5th, 6th, 7th. I've been listening to Srila Prabhupada talking a lot on that different subject of the Chaturvarna Maya Shrishtam Gunai Karma Vibhaga. So he's explaining that yes, the low class can be trained. By training, one can be trained. No one becomes a high court judge overnight, is it? You just wake up one morning and you decide, I'm going to be a high court judge. No, you have to undergo training. You have to take the proper course of training. And you can be trained if you are very determined. In a similar way, Srila Prabhupada said even the 5th and 6th class chandalas and mlechas can be trained. But Srila Prabhupada often said, it's a great science, it's a great science. And sometimes we think, yeah, I got the science, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, and then read for 1 hour, 2 hours, and whatever else, or sadhana. Yes, that's part of the science. How to interact with devotees, that's another part of the science. And sometimes it's very easy, and other times it's excruciatingly painful and difficult. And sometimes you're sailing smooth, and then it's smoother, and then it's better, and it's really good. And other times it's bump. You bumped into something, and then you go that way, and boom, bumped into something again. You're bumping around in different ways. So many lessons to be learned. Let's see if there's any other points that I'd written, a few things last night. I was thinking of an example of anger. A couple of examples came to mind. I was thinking of one last night about 12:30 at night, when, I don't know if anyone, did everyone hear the rock concert or something that was going on around here? Did you hear it? Was it the golf club? I phoned the police last night at 12:30. I said, I phoned they put me through to the Auckland Council Noise Control. I said, maybe you've had hundreds of calls about this, but I'm in a place where there's a rock concert or something going on, and it's midnight sort of thing. And I was reminded at that time of It was interesting. Again, it's part of this science of life, what to do and what not to do, when to tolerate, when to take action. Srila Prabhupada was on a plane with one or two of his secretary and servant, and I think it was, I mentioned this a few months ago, I think he was returning to Australia, that's what I think, but I may have got that wrong. But it was a rugby crowd. So maybe he was going to South Africa, they're into rugby, and maybe it wasn't New Zealand, so it might have been Australia. I think it was. Anyway, they were sitting on the airplane, and at that time there was smoking and non-smoking. Hands up if you're old enough to remember that. Not many. See, you were all born and the planes don't have, but there used to be, you had to book your ticket, smoking or non-smoking. And then you had to be careful. They'd say, oh yes, non-smoking, and you got the seat right next to the smokers, the last row. So you had to ask for the seat, and you can imagine all the sannyasis would be expert. I want rows 6, 7, and 8, but not any, to try and get as far away from the smoking. So Srila Prabhupada was there on the plane, and some people, the rugby crowd, had seats in the non-smoking section, and they were smoking. And so the servant said to those people that, hey, this is non-smoking. If you could, it would be kind enough. So he went back to his seat and sat there, and then the smoking continued. And then the disciple said to Srila Prabhupada, I'll go on. And Prabhupada said, sit down. He said, it's okay. He said, tolerate. He said, if you complain, you're no better than anyone else. If you keep make a big thing of this, you're just as bad as the non-devotees. You have to learn tolerance. So it was a very nice example. First, Prabhupada was okay, tell them, but then afterwards, just tolerate. So we see Srila Prabhupada was so tolerant, what to speak of when he went to New York and the meat was in the fridge and he had to live and eat, and against, you can imagine, living in Vrindavan in those days for so many years, just about doing his bhajan and preaching and so on. And then going to New York City where he had to tolerate the heat and the cold, he had to tolerate so many things. So I was thinking last night, as I was thinking of that when I was lying, just trying to get to sleep. I had earplugs in, I had the phone waiting on this. It was so funny actually. I was complaining about, it sounded like a rock concert, yeah? So I'm on the phone, and it said, we'll transfer you to the Auckland Council for noise complaints or something. And then immediately, when you put on hold, music comes on. It was the same kind of stuff. I thought, I can't get away from this. So I had to turn the mic off, and I was thinking, should I be tolerant or take action? So I thought, we'll do something. So anyway, about half an hour later, it stopped. Now, whether it was because it was finished, or whether they said they'd send somebody out. So all of this comes about by the interaction of, what's the word? I wrote it. Polluted, contaminated consciousness. Kam, Krodh, Lobha, Moha, Mana, and Matsarya. Lust, anger, and greed. Lust, anger, and greed. It's said that anger is a secondary emotion. It's a secondary emotion. Anger is caused by something. Anyone suggest what it might be caused by? Frustration, yes. Anger after frustration. And then, why are we frustrated? Unfulfilled desires, yes. Unfulfilled desires. And how do desires come about? How do you gain desires? I'm thinking of a verse, Bhagavad Gita.
Contemplating on the sense of...
Yes. Jayato visayam pumsa sankashtashu pajayate sanjayate kamat krodha krodhat bhavati samohat smriti vibhavsat buddhina sat pranashati is the last line. So it goes from contemplating the object of the senses. Now that takes us even further back. We get into that discussion. contemplating the objects of the senses. That's why we are advised, asat sanga tyag, to give up the association of the sense enjoyers, the people who are, not that we are thinking ourselves so advanced and so wonderful, we are not sense enjoyers. We are sense enjoyers also, but we are engaged in the process of purifying those desires to satisfy our senses through the process of bhakti yoga, the linking process of devotional service, which can clear away all the anarthas. Anartho pashamam shakshat bhakti yoga adhoksuje. It's said that all the anarthas are unnecessary things which are superfluous to the living entity. This is Bhagavatam, second chapter, second canto, I think. Second canto at least. It says, Anartho pashamam shakshat bhakti yoga adhoksuje. That those pollutions, those contaminations are superfluous. They're not actually part of the jiva, the living entity. They're contaminated, just like water falling from the sky. It's pure and then it becomes contaminated. So they can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But lokash ajanato, they don't. The mass of people, the people of the world, don't agana. They don't know this. So the great sage Vyasadeva has compiled this Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is in relationship to the supreme absolute truth. So people don't have this idea. So we are in this process of linking our consciousness to desires which will bring good result, and not linking it to the objects of the senses. I'm trying to think also, there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita. Who knows that one? The intelligent person does not take part in sources of misery, which are due to contact with material senses. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in those activities. He doesn't have his focus there. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekkeha kurunandana bahushakayanantascha buddhayo vyavasayanam. Those who are on this path are resolute and fixed, and those who are irresolute, their intelligence is many-branched and they're everywhere. To the rock dance, to the beer, to the wine shop, to the movies, to the party, to the whatever's going on, trying to go out and gain pleasure for the senses. But we have done that. Punah punas charvata charvana nam. We've experienced that. And that is the process of devotional service. And then we engage in the devotional service and we get a taste, and then we lose the taste for different reasons. And then we think this doesn't work either. I tried that. I tried the outside sense gratification, and then I came to devotional service and I was doing okay, but then I'm trying to dovetail it all, and we think maybe this doesn't work either. That's why Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. That is the only means for attainment of the final perfection of life, is Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. We've tried Bhakti Yoga, but we haven't tried so much Tivrena Bhakti Yoga, the intensive practice of devotional service. Now, that sounds really intense, but it doesn't mean intense anxiety. It means satatam kirtayantam. It means always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, always bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually, hear all these words? They mean tivrena, means intense. Perpetually worship me with devotion. I've mentioned before, Srila Prabhupada in one pour, he says, Bhakti Yoga, the real application of Bhakti Yoga is 24 hours a day. When we first joined the temple in Melbourne in 1975, we finally joined full time. And we came to the temple and we heard that statement. People were saying, you should come for the early morning program. We said, okay, when's that? Oh, you could come at 7 o'clock. Come greet the deities. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. Wow, that's pretty early. 7, you got to get maybe to up. Okay, well, let's go to the early morning program. And then we were doing that for a little while, and some devotee said, very kindly said, why don't you come to the early program? said, I'm here for the early program. It's 7 o'clock. He said, no, we start at 4:30. I said, 4:30? You guys, what is going on? 4:30, this is intense, the intensive practice of devotional service. Why? Because Krishna wants us to suffer, wants us to be intense. Prabhupada wanted to set up something to make us squirm and feel difficulty. No, he set it up so you could be sheltered from the material energy. And he said, then they said, so we're going at 4:30 to the program all the way through. Then we were told, I told you that one also before, also they said, I'm sorry, you can't get initiated until you are coming to all the program. And we said, my wife and I said, we're coming for the Mangalarti. We stay all the way through from 4:30 Mangalarti through till 9 o'clock. We take prasadam, we go to work at Spiritual Sky where we do some stuff, service for Krishna. We come home, take a bath, take prasadam, go to the evening program, and then we go home. So that's the whole program. So now we've noticed you're not coming for Krishna book reading. Krishna book reading is after Bhagavad Gita, just before hot milk. So unless you're coming for that, we had a flat along the road, so we had to. So we thought we could go home, and I don't know what we do. You get there, it's time to go to bed. So it wasn't to make life unbearable, but it was to protect us from the asat sangha, the association, where desires can be contemplated and what's the word? Nurtured desires. So, Dhyayato visayan pumsa. And then Krishna is asking Kama esha, krodha esha, rajaguna samudbhava. It is lust only, born of contact of the material nature, which is later transformed into wrath. So this anger comes about due to contemplation and desire, and then when the desire is not fulfilled, one becomes frustrated, and after you're frustrated, when you feel frustration, you don't have to wait very long before anger will come. My desire was okay, my desire was good, it was this, it was that. We justify it and see it in so many different ways, and then we become angry. From anger, delusion. We become deluded. From delusion, bewilderment of memory. Why am I here anyway at this yagya? Why did I come here? I don't want to get out of here. And everyone said to Daksha, don't blow it. Please, we're happy to have you here, and it's great, and you're doing great, and don't go, it's okay. He's thinking, why am I here? I don't want to be here. Totally the memory, completely bewildered. Intelligence is lost, and then one falls into the material pool. And the amazing thing, it takes about 5 seconds. The whole thing. It can take 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 years, or 5 seconds from Shanti to It's not that difficult. And it's felt as an impurity. You can feel it when anger. Next time you're angry, I don't know if you'll be able to catch it on the way up, because chances are you're going there, you don't feel anything else. But you might be able to catch it trying to go down. As you try and get out of that anger, you'll feel it. It's in your chest, heaving chest, and maybe it's in your eyes, red eyes. So it's like an adrenaline. You've heard of adrenaline. Yeah? It's like an adrenaline rush. So you get an anger rush, and it permeates your whole body, pollutes the whole body. So generally anger is not to be manifest. Dhruva Maharaj was also instructed by Swayambhuva Manu. He became he became very angry because the Yakshas had killed his brother. He was very upset by that, and he took proper action as great Kshatriya king, and he acted against the Yaksha. Then it was the Yakshas, then it was all the Yakshas, and it was explained by Swayambhuva Manu to Dhruva Maharaj that it's not befitting an exalted personality to manifest anger so much, because now you're killing unnecessarily all the Yaksha race. It was only one Yaksha who killed your brother, but now you're annihilating the whole race of Yakshas. And if it was necessary, maybe it could be done, but your anger is starting to control your actions. So he encouraged them, it's Shanti, it's time now to. Yeah? So we've got a few enemies to work against. Prahlad Maharaj explained to his father, he didn't call him father, he called him best of the Asuras. He referred to him in that way. O best of the Asuras, you have conquered all your enemies. The demigods are quivering at the moving of your eyebrows. You are so powerful, you have controlled all your enemies. But you have not controlled the 6 enemies that are closest to you. And you can't even see them. They're so clever enemies. And they are situated within your heart. Kam, Krodha, Moha. Kam, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mana, and Matsarya. Lust, anger, and greed. Madness, illusion, and envy. So these are the real enemies to be controlled. And the question remains, how to do that? We used to make a joke of that. 3 words, what to do, how to do. 3 very small words but have oceans of meaning and significance. How to do it? How do you control that? And the result is not good. You see this whole pastime here. Very exalted personalities. So what to speak of us? So Srila Prabhupada, often when it was pointed out that great personalities are sometimes influenced by lower qualities, then you can think, well, if they're influenced by lower qualities, what chance do I have? If great personalities like these are influenced by lust, anger, and greed, then me? What chance do I have? So you could think in that way, or Srila Prabhupada, he said, no, when we hear these things, we see how serious we must be to take shelter of Krishna. And it's only by Krishna's grace that these things can be overcome. It cannot be done by ourselves. When we read the bhajans of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's praying in that way as like a conditioned soul. He's saying, I have struggled throughout this life in so many ways. I'm forced by the influence of lower desires in so many ways. Only if you, my Lord, come and sit in my heart, will I be able to become freed from the influence. So our mood of Bhakti Yoga has to come to this point where we call out. You've heard Srila Prabhupada saying the chanting of Hare Krishna should be like the genuine cry of a child for its mother. When a child cries, meh, 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 mother's like, yeah, yeah. But when the child genuinely cries, immediately the mother responds. She knows very clearly the difference between the cries. Similarly, Krishna knows Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, we're everywhere. Like, okay, Krishna's hearing you, yeah, obviously you're doing something over there. But if we get to the point where we say, my dear Lord, without you in my heart, without your mercy, without your care and compassion, I'm useless. There's no way I can over. Daivahi esha gunamai mama maya duratyaya. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. This maya is very difficult, insurmountable, not able to overcome. But those who surrender unto me, me think, I'm surrendered. Oh yeah? You are you? guess what? You got Saranagati, again back to Vinod Thakur, he's written many, many nuances of how to surrender. So if we can call out to Krishna that without your grace, without your shelter, I have no possibility, but if you kindly come and sit in my heart, and then I'll be very thankful. I'll be very appreciative if you can do like that. So, asat sanga tyag, don't take the association. And actually, I was reading somewhere in this section. I read it a little bit earlier yesterday, I think maybe, that actually Lord Shiva, I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives his commentary, and he says that Lord Shiva was so exalted he shouldn't have. He was denied access to the yajna by the curse. Yes, so he wasn't going to be given any of the oblations. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that that was a blessing because Lord Shiva actually is so exalted he shouldn't be sitting and taking the association of such materialistic persons, actually, the demigods. Now we have to be very respectful of all the demigods because they're very exalted in one sense. From our position they're very exalted and worshipable. But from Lord Shiva's position, so Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that it was a benediction in one sense because he didn't have to sit and be with them all in all their material activities. Lord Shiva was there because he's in charge of that guna and he's one of the principal demigods, but he's not interested. He's not interested in anything. He hasn't even got a house. He's a grihasta without a house. And Daksha wasn't very happy about that actually. So much offensive Daksha was that he spoke. He didn't realize that he was actually criticizing his own father, Lord Brahma, who had made the arrangement for him to marry Sati. So Lord Brahma is father of Daksha. So he'd made this arrangement to marry Shiva's daughter Sati. So in his words he was speaking in such a way which was derogatory towards Lord Brahma. That you made this arrangement. You've made this arrangement. So he's criticizing him. You shouldn't have made this arrangement. So this is how bewildered. He was blaspheming Lord Shiva and criticizing his own father. And this way he ended up, we'll hear later, somebody suggested that he was so silly he should get a goat's head. And he ended up with a goat's head. We used to listen when I first joined the movement. My wife and I, as I mentioned earlier, we used to work at Spiritual Sky, and they had this, there was an old thing called a cassette. They have them in museums. There's a cassette thing, and they used to play cassette. Anyway, so there was one about this, the whole Daksha Yagya. I curse you! And they had all the sound effects, and there was all Lord Shiva's hobgoblins, and on this side the demigods, and it was I curse you, and I curse you, and I curse you that you have a goat's head, and I curse you, I counter curse. It was quite a thing. We used to listen to it all the time, cursing and counter cursing. Oh, funny. So, we should be always praying to Krishna to guide our thoughts so that we don't unnecessarily enter into things unnecessarily. Okay, I'm going to finish there because there is prasadam coming, and I know that devotees cook so nicely, and I know the devotees relish so much the prasadam. Any questions or comments or some reflection on anything that you've heard that you'd like to share?
Thank you, brother.
Krishna.
So you're talking about tolerance,
Mm.
and then we also hear how one should reveal the mind in confidence. And so I was thinking,
Can everyone hear or not? Pretty good? You're sitting right next to us. Is everyone okay to hear? Pretty good?
like when we live with other devotees, you know, whether we're in the Grihastha ashram or in the Brahmacharya ashram.
Hard to tolerate them, isn't it? I can really empathize with you. They are so hard to live with.
So when do we draw the line
Okay, we're going to answer your question. Where do we draw the line from tolerating or taking some action in some way? Or what was the word you suggested? A nicer word. You said something.
Well, it's revealing the mind and confidence, but I guess that's a different concept. But I mean, just in dealing with other people we live with, when do we say something?
When do we say something, or when do we be tolerant? So I'm going to try and answer in a clever way, but I don't know if it's going to be clever at all. But anyway, hands up those who are satisfied by eating one chapati, usually. Tell me when you get to the saturation or the satisfaction point. 2 chapatis, usually if you sit down for a couple of chapatis, okay, we'll get a couple, 2 or 3, 4 or 5, that's good. Be honest now. And nobody else look. You just look at me, don't look at other people. 3 chapatis? 4. Who likes 4 chapatis? Okay, good. 1 or 2, 4. 5 chapatis, if you sat down and 5 chapatis. Good. There's one honest man, but he's a rogue. He's just such a rogue, he's putting his hand up. I'm joking, please. Oh, Daksha Yagya, you could, I said a harsh word, you could counter-curse me. I remember eating, it was either 10 or 11 chapatis. It was in West Punjabi Bagh. I know it, I can remember this exactly. It was Surabi Swami at that time, a very nice person. He passed away a few years back. We watched one of his videos, Remembrances of Prabhupada, recently. And he was Surabi Swami, and he had a small temple in West Punjabi Bagh in Delhi. And we went there, and the devotees were cooking the chapatis, and as soon as they were made, they just puffed up, they were on your plate. So I remember I got to 10. They were very thin chapatis, but they were so good, and the way they were being served and the mood was so... I got a 10 chapati, I can't believe saying that now. So, does that answer your question? No. We are all going to have to deal with this, adjust according to time, place and circumstance. Sometimes we may speak. If we speak a little inappropriately, listening to the super soul within our heart, if you speak in such a way as it's not received very well, be conscious. Prabhupada said, conscious, then Krishna conscious. So we may speak in a certain way to say something about something. If it's received well, you'll soon know. If the person says, oh, thank you, Prabhupada, and you'll know. And when you haven't, whether it's your fault or their fault, whoever's fault, you'll know. So then we're introspective. Maybe I shouldn't have said this. If you feel that that's the case, you may have to say, look, I didn't mean to speak in that way. It came across. You might have to deal with it. If you can. The other person may have taken offense and doesn't want to hear you, doesn't want to see your face. And then you're stuck with that problem. What to do then? And so it goes on. We were talking the other day to a nice devotee, and we are learning how to become surrendered. We hear about this all the time, to surrender to Krishna. Surrender, surrender, surrender. And the other point that we were discussing is how to surrender and retain your ability to discriminate. To not become mindless, but to be able to discriminate and be able to make a judgment on something. But if we make it, and then, yes, I've made this judgment, I got it, I know what's going on, and whoops, and then we take action, we've got to be really careful that we're not being driven by passion and ignorance and whatever we're being driven by. I hope it answers a little bit. It touches on the subject, at least. It's not an absolute answer.
Yes, it seems like it's quite subtle and almost, you're talking about, it's like almost like an intuitive, you have to feel it out.
Yeah, it's a little intuitive, you have to feel it out, yes. And don't worry, you'll get another chance. When you blow it and offend somebody, there'll be another chance, and we get many chances. But we should be careful not to unnecessarily blow it all the time. Otherwise, it's not good for our spiritual life, especially in the Vaishnava arena. But at the same time, we have to be independently thoughtful. Srila Prabhupada said, I want to train my disciples and followers to become independently thoughtful. Not to become independent, no, to become independently thoughtful, to retain that ability and still be in a mood of humility. So when we hear the qualities of a devotee, they're sometimes very difficult to grasp. They're very grave, but they're very jolly. Huh? Grave. Jolly. Huh? How can you be grave and jolly? That's what the Vaishnavas can have, all those different qualities. Seemingly contradictory, but not contradictory at all, actually. Any other questions or reflections? Okay, have an offenseless day. Prabhu.
Something at the beginning you said that Nandishvara,
Yes.
should have followed Lord Shiva's example and being equipoise.
Yes.
Lord Shiva being female. He said he got angry. But then we hear that the best use of anger is to use it against someone who blasphemes Vaishnava.
Yes.
So, generally from these pastimes, what I understand we're supposed to learn something from them. So,
That was a good question. Prabhu says he understands that from these pastimes we're supposed to learn something.
so what do we take?
What do we learn?
What do we take from this pastime?
What we take from this pastime? Who can say? Yeah? Something? Just what comes to your mind when you're asked that? What should we learn from this, all that we've been discussing? Put your hand up and just give me a yes.
Stick up for your friends or your...
Stick up for your friends. Okay? That's good, a one-liner. Yeah. Don't be puffed up. Become tolerant. Oh, now you're back in a predicament. Anger is very polluting. Caution, caution, caution. When the anger oozes. Yeah? It's said in the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj is getting angry that one should not become a source of dread for others. When we become angry, when somebody's angry, it's like, wow. Especially, can you imagine somebody being really angry right now? It's like, wow. It's a source of dread. So anything else we learned from today? So I hope you're completely confused. So all those things, at different times and different circumstances can be applied, to become tolerant. Generally, tolerance is very much encouraged, to be tolerant and not to respond to everything. Be tolerant. At the same time, learn, if you're not going to be tolerant, like we heard of the pastime of Jiva Goswami and Sanatan, and learning when to take action and how to do it. He did it in a very perfect way. He didn't jump in front of his guru and say so many things. He waited till there was an appropriate time when he was there alone, so he wouldn't embarrass the person. And he did the best he possibly could. And then when he was told to leave Vrindavan, he didn't respond with anger. Oh, come on, I was protecting you, Maharaj. No, he tolerated totally and left. And was tolerated. He was living in a small cave of some kind. Okay, we're going to finish there because the tolerance is too much. I can feel anger going to come from the crowd here. And the prasadam will not, it'll be a daksha, I'll get cursed. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Rama.